Hello, everyone. It's title testing 3.0. I'm from Argentina, and we're very stressed right now. It's not only being here today with you today, but please understand that also we have a very important soccer match this afternoon. So I might be a bit stressed out. So let's start. This is the presentation I shared with Fede before. Have um, you might have taken a look at it. So let me tell you a bit about what we're going to talk today in terms of terminology. Uh, there are some issues regarding state of art of what we know about personal baggage, of the information available, of the industry, and what it does. And then we have, in general terms, mainstream, what we do, what we see that the people is doing. So let me exemplify. Code version. From the state of art, it's very clear that we need to have code version. If you work in software development, I'm sure you're within teams who have code versions. Do you do it? Do you have code versions? Let's think that you do. Okay. The state of the art says that we should. Most of the people do this. But it's also quite common that if I have to do a story, I generate a branch. When I end the branch, I mix it with a queue request and ask for authorization. That is mainstream, but that's not state of the art. State of the art says don't generate branches. That's what research and academia and evidence has proved. Don't do it. There's a difference between a clear difference between mainstream and state of the art. This is important. It may initially contradict some of the we for today. How will you test in production? Well, that's what state of the art is. There is evidence to tell us that this is the new path and that this will work. But the truth is that most of the people don't apply it because it's difficult. I don't like it. I don't feel like it. There are many situations in our industry where there is an evidence that there is a path I should walk, I should take, and then most of us go elsewhere. So this is something that we need to think about. And I am going to be talking about this throughout the talk. So I have 20 minutes. I'm going to go fast. I have like 35 slides. Okay. Let's make it, if we go 40 years back, approximately my age, testing was an informal activity in a way. It still happens in some contexts. A requirement gets in, it's coded, someone verifies it manually, sort of exploratory testing. They obtain a result that will depend on the person, on the tester, because it's a very informal and non-specified tester. The same for developers. All of the developers test and do testing. It's not like you test, you code, and then you don't test. You do as a developer, even if it's a very basic test, you do it. At some point, everyone did that. Then we realized that this approach had some issues. So at a further time, we get to the formal testing, traditional waterfall testing. It's what you can still see in the descriptions in some books. And in university, for instance, they tell you that you need to do this. You will start from a functionality specification that the user will make with an analyst that describes the functionality. And from this description of functionality, which may be more or less strict in terms of function, the developer will interpret this to make the app, and then we need to write test cases. When functionality is completed, the test cases are used to verify, to check functionality. And what's interesting is that it doesn't matter who makes the checking, the verification, because the test cases are already specified, and those are the steps that need to be followed. So the result should be the same independently of who is testing the process. So that is what the books say. They've been telling that since the 80s. The industries, has it been working like this since the 80s? No way. Today, after many, many problems, today some corporations are working like that, but not most of them. One of the things that books were already saying on the 80s was that this process didn't happen simultaneously. It was more of a sequential process. I develop the functionality. When that is over, it's transferred to another area. People who I don't interact with every day, they may be in another office. They test it with the test cases, and then they provide feedback. And we start on a conversation, on a dialogue. This works, this doesn't. Here's a bug. Here it's, and there is a tension with testers because they discover bugs. And so the tester is criticizing your job. It's not your friend. Have you ever felt it's difficult to become friends with that person who's evaluating your work? So that's the situation. I think that you might have been in these situations sometimes before, feeling this tension when you needed to report a bug. Or you know the developer and you need to report bugs on him. So what's the next step in the evolution? We start working in a more agile way. Many post-its. What did agile brought? Well, what did it contribute with? Well, it brought post-its, that's for sure. Formally, it contributed with many things. How many things in the industry did we actually seize? Only 3. In the agile first version, we started including testing in the developing team. So rather than do it as a sequential process, the tester gets involved in the daily activities of the developers. So if it detects a bug, it won't just report it. It will be a different interaction, quicker interaction. So we become friends, developers and testers. We become friends rather than the tester reporting on the developer. This was one of the ideas behind Agile, and it is successful, but there are other ideas that didn't thrive in this first version. Agile was created during the 90s. In 2001, it started gaining more force or power. And between 2001 and 2010, 2012, we have what some of us call agile first generation, and then continuous delivery, DevOps and such started gaining more traction. As Claudia mentioned today, the DevOps is a bit of a continuation on agile. And so we started thinking, recreating some things from agile that agile had proposed, but that no one paid really real attention to. And we started, appreciating those features. So that's when testing agile as a fact started. So DevOps, from my point of view, so here we all work in software. We have an idea, a need, a business opportunity, someone thinks about something, the project gains shape, we evaluate benefits, risks, pitfalls, we start working iteratively, iterations are made, verifications are made, we reach production, actual users see this, we need to operate, obtain metrics, and we start to make money. Typically, on the first stage, the business is involved in order to identify the problem and the needs. Comes the developing team, and there used to be a given friction between business and team and the development team. Agile really helped in this sense with ideas. So in terms of interaction, like, they're not as weirdos as we thought they were. So it started, things started flowing better. But then on the next stage, again, and the bigger a corporation is, the most divisions it will have, and so there will always appear these tensions of the other teams are weirdos, or they're reporting on me. There will be frictions, as there used to be with testers, as we said before. So applications incorporation also created operations, created frictions, and so operations team realized they had to become friends with the business teams. So let's become friends. I mean, the system won't work unless we become friends and we interact with each other. So that's DevOps, basically. So the whole point of DevOps is to obtain functionalities faster and for the whole process to flow without sacrificing stability and application of the app. We need to change some things in the way we work, but also these new ways of working will need new tools. Something that is very evident. I'm sorry, this is out of place. Claudia already used it, and I thought she had spoiled my my talk. So I'm not going to go into it in detail, but this is a typical representation, and Janet Gregory proposed that as testers in this DevOps world, we can have an influence on all of this, right? So please check Claudia's talk on this morning for more detail on this. But let's think about the importance of iterative development. I do a first iteration. I'm going to work on 10 items. I finish the iteration. Second iteration, another 10 items. I iterate throughout this 10 items, but I need to consider the first 10. So I keep adding my storyline. On our third iteration, Again, I need to test my third iteration, what I did on my second iteration, what I did on my first iteration. So if I'm going to do this manually, it will be absolutely unsustainable. With each consecutive step, it becomes harder to test. So I have two options. Either I automate, or I'm a believer. And we start praying. I don't know if you believe in God, but I don't think this will work. My God, some automation tools in order to solve this issue. So DevOps really put on the table. One of the things that the Agile manifest, not in the Scrum, but in the XP version, made us realize is that we need to automate tests. Who automated between 2000 and 2005? Almost no one. Today with DevOps, we start realizing, discovering that we absolutely need to automate tests. Again, the difference between mainstream and state of the art. State of the art knows this for a long time. If we really consider the agile testing proposal, it's based on 4 pillars beyond post-its. Testing is not only the work of testers, developers need to test, and they do automated unitary tests as a minimum. Any developers in the room? Only a few. We need to test. Do you agree? Unitary tests, we need to test. Another thing is the early testing. I do the whole iteration, I finish all of the story, and I ask the tester to finish testing everything on the last minute. No. When the iteration starts, on the second, I should be rounding up some of the features, functionalities. We need to be in coordination with the tester so that tester can give us feedback on and early on in the process. I don't wait for the final part of the iteration to test. I start iterating and I start testing. I don't write the test after having the functionality. I write the test, I design the test beforehand. It may be specification with examples. I may call it like that or not, but what's important is that I specify how it works based on the test. It became popular between developers. All of the developers know it, but none of the developers use it. But it's slowly acquired a higher relevance, reaching more people. Today, we can all work with look, I should write the unitary test, the functional test before I code so that the developer understands how to code, right? And well, of course, automation, which I already mentioned. 10 minutes, okay, I'm a bit tired, but I'm great in time-wise. Specification with example, the idea is that I start the functionality with the meeting of the 3 friends. So that's the people, the person who knows how the system needs to work, needs to behave. The developer and tester have a meeting with this person because the tester and developer need to know what they're going to test. And we're going to do this at the beginning. After this meeting, I will write the user story. It may be a useless sentence. But what is the idea? The useless story comes with a set of test cases, which we call examples, but they're basically test cases. With all of this, we guarantee that we understand functionality. And with that in mind, the developer can start to see, okay, this functionality has 8 test cases. Well, it tells me about its complexity. This other functionality has 35 test cases. Okay, this functionality may be too big. Let's break it apart. It's also talking to me about its complexity. So the developer can estimate better that the complexity of the work. The amount of test cases tells a lot in terms of complexity. So we have this 3-friend meeting. We understand the functionality, we create test cases. Now let's get to work. So when the developer starts to code, it already knows how it will be tested. So what about the tester? The tester will have a lot of work to do also from the beginning. The tester may be working on automation of these cases, or maybe adding more cases, maybe interacting in other things with the developer, maybe helping the developer to apply the unitary tests. When the developer finishes, the cases are identified, and there shouldn't be so much more back and forth between the developer and the tester. The developer has run unitary tests. The developer knows what the tests are going to be because they run them themselves, and they warn the tester that they also need to test them in a different environment. So there is a back and forth that is way more fluid. It's more amicable between the developer and the tester. This is an example of a test case. It's something that may be automated. So it's the calculation of the commissions for a delivery guy. I'm going to have a meeting with the business manager. I need to give him a tool that is user friendly and not Java, right? That we can write in Spanish, everyone can understand it. We write on a notebook. So the developing needs to be addressed differently from the beginning. We know how it should behave. So the technique, all of these techniques are written here in these books. If you're ever interested in knowing more, exemplification by example, behavior during development. But they all mean these important concepts. They all mean the same, basically. These are in my understanding, the most clear books to represent requirements in this way. From the development perspective, how do we expect a developer to work in this context? We have the acceptation test in syntaxis Gherkin. That's going to guide the developer. And the developer, in doing a unitary test, in order to have an acceptance test, you need to run a lot of unitary tests. So for this process to be successful, if I'm doing TDD, the developer is doing the whole process in terms of unit testing. And so I do a quick manual test and I ask the tester to check it in their environment. And this allows for a lot less back and forth. So I was talking before about agile testing, year 2000. It was in the books, nobody was doing it. DevOps arrived, and so we started thinking, okay, well, maybe this is something we should do. But DevOps brought a lot of other things beyond testing. We continue to talk about functional testing, and as testers, we have a lot more to bring into a team that aims to deliver functionalities. So I was trying to show Freddie Mercury in when he's coming into the stage, that represents the opportunity that is there. The tester, with all of this DevOps thing, the tester has the grand opportunity to be the rock star, to come on stage. It's sort of like the tester has always been like the, I don't know, like the bass player that has a low profile, but it's actually super important because they mark the rhythm, you know? So also like the aide who will help the rock leader change guitars, right? So that's the tester. But the tester today needs to come on stage and become the singer. It has a lot of value to bring into any process. But as Mr. Performer, Senior Performer would say before, well, that's true, but there's still some things that we need to learn. So we need more collaborative work. We need to sit next to the developer. We need to talk to the user. We cannot, as testers, stay in our bubble and just test. We need to participate in the estimatives to state our opinion. We need to say what we feedback. We need to collaborate more. If you're going to try to automate a test, we need to code. There is a whole new opportunity with observability. And we need to understand certain structure and metrics. There are new things to learn. In order to come on stage to sing, well, you need to know how to. We need to work on learning the new skills necessary for this kind of role. So these are some of the traditional skills a tester was always supposed to have, but it's very evident from looking at this list, the ability to automate. We have the issue also of pipelines. We don't do it manually anymore. We click and the whole process starts. There are many verifications that we can add. It's got to do with quality and not necessarily with functionality testing. In the context of a pipeline, we could start a zoning to check security and other aspects. There is room to work on pipelines and on generating new tools that would help us to bring quality from a different perspective other than functional testing. we need to have a more whole vision, right? Lisa Crispin's infinite diagram mentions a lot of places where we can improve integral quality. They use the term holistic. That sounds a bit mystical to me. It doesn't matter. The term doesn't matter. The use these possibilities. Let's incorporate technical skills. Let's work in a more collaborative way. We have a new possibility in terms of observability, which is to test in production. When you test in production, you don't stop testing in other contexts, but it will open a whole series of possibilities that we can enter if we have tools that allow us to watch observability. And this may help in two ways: to provide feedback and ideas. And this has to do with codification, and also with infrastructure. What we code needs to be motivated by business drivers. And that's where observability becomes important. And the tester plays an important role in discovering this, always if they collaborate with the business. And then also, let's watch the metrics, the visibility that comes from all of this infrastructure. That is a new role. Typically, the tester just gave their approval and never came on stage. They gave the communication to other parties, and testers need to become more involved at all stages. And I think I'm asking you as testers to actually assume this role. I want testers to change their attitudes, to become more proactive. I'd like this to become a mainstream attitude. I think that the business, the industry would improve. Well, this is what I wanted to share with you today. Thank you. Thank you so much. Do we have any questions? I will be here only until 3. Remember, I have Argentina's soccer match this afternoon. Okay, so about when you talked about useless processes, what do you mean? Well, that's a pattern, and it's got to do with the value that user codes has. That's not a specification of the client. If the phrase is the whole aim of the business, I don't know what I have to do. That's like a deformation. It's a simplification that many times it is useless. Okay, so I get together with the user, I write a lot of phrases. Okay, you can do that, but you can have all of those stories, but what if you need to code tomorrow? It will be useless. If you are in a planning stage and you need to know what you're going to code in the next 2 weeks, it just won't do the trick. You need to write it in a way where there needs to be acceptance criteria, there needs to be examples. Something more generic for the stories set. That's what I meant, I think, when I said useless. Thank you so much, Nico. Thank you for the invitation and for your attention.